morning and welcome to Rising. We have a stupendous show for you this morning. So glad you are watching us. We really appreciate it. Hello, Briahna.
Hello, happy Juneteenth.
Yes, happy Juneteenth. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good.
You had a little bit of travel?
I did. I was in Philadelphia, which feels like a kind of a patriotic good thing to do this time of year. Juneteenth, the 4th of July coming up, etc. How about yourself?
Didn't do much. No surprise, a lot of Zelda. And the wife's going out of town next weekend, so next weekend will be a Zelda-rama. Okay, let's get to the news. We've got a great show today. As we said, Ken Klippenstein will join us from The Intercept to discuss the FBI's increase in investigations into abortion rights activism. Plus, you might have seen commentator Keith Olbermann calling for Briahna and I to be fired by our bosses.
He's trying to cancel us,
He's
Robby.
trying to cancel us. I hope they missed that. I don't think we're in any jeopardy, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And what are we talking about right now?
Well, first up, yesterday, the Biden administration missed its deadline to declassify documents relating to the origins of COVID-19 as required by Congress. The spring 2023 COVID-19 Origins Act required the White House to release the documents within 90 days of its passing, which was June 18th. Now, back in March, President Biden agreed to, quote, declassify and share as much of that information as possible. However, he pledged to keep disclosures, quote, consistent with his constitutional authority to protect national security. Now, as of the taping of this segment Monday morning, the Biden administration seems to have ignored this deadline. This even after GOP Senators Josh Hawley and Mike Braun sent a letter last week urging the president to abide by the law, writing, quote, the American people deserve to know how this pandemic began. And their democratically elected representatives have expressed their will unanimously. We urge you not to stand in their way.
So this is not entirely surprising, but very disappointing. The administration has just blown past this deadline. I should say, as far as I can tell, it's not, like I was looking for the information. It's not on, it's supposed to be on the Department of National Intelligence website. It's not the Director of National Intelligence. It's not there. They haven't put out any press releases or anything in the last few days to suggest it came out. So unless they buried it on some corner of federalgovernment.com that I can't, .gov, that I can't find, it's not out yet. I saw some people speculating that I don't know, maybe it's counting business days and it's a holiday and maybe Tuesday.
I was going to say, is it still yesterday in Hawaii?
No, I don't know what's going on. But also there's speculation that, so Blinken's in China right now, that they wouldn't want to release it while he's in China because this report might offend the Chinese
you can anticipate
authorities.
And predict. We knew that they had a 90-day timeline. Why would they plan it? If that was going to prevent them from doing the thing that they're obliged to do, why plan his trip for this date? Right,
and what we're additionally concerned about is that, so there's very little enforcement mechanism in this law, which was passed, totally bipartisan. Everyone voted for it. Biden signed it. Does that mean it's toothless because there's no enforcement, and also there is a written-in exception for the Director of National Intelligence to say, no, this is national security, because this is supposed to be not another report summarizing the fact that various intelligence agencies have concluded X, Y, or Z. We want the actual intelligence. We want to know why they concluded X, Y, or Z. And what I'm getting at is what we want is really confirmation of what Taibbi, Schellenberger, and others reported that we talked about on the show recently, that the first 3 patients or the 3 earliest patients they can find are these scientists, Ben Hu and others, who worked at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. First people to become sick. If that is confirmed, and again, Schellenberger, Taibbi have reported it based on information they've gotten from government sources. If that's confirmed, I mean, that's pretty persuasive evidence that it did in fact come from the lab. The Wall Street Journal did report this actually years ago, and there just wasn't a lot of follow-up. So my guess, it's just a guess, is that the government does have that information. It has knowledge that those 3 scientists were sick. So I want that, once that's declassified, then we can, everyone can make whatever conclusions they want, but the very strong conclusion of that will be that COVID came from a lab.
Yeah, you had hypothesized a little bit that perhaps the, intelligence sources that prompted Schellenberger et al. To write the story the timing of that might have been related to the fact that the information was all about to come out anyway. So maybe there's a lower risk threshold to give them a little bit of a scoop when you know the information is going to come out or whatever it is. But the fact of this information now being delayed, at least in the short term, does that make you feel differently about that at all?
I don't know. I mean, it could be also internally there's frustration that it's not going to be released publicly the way clearly is the will of the people and the people who voted for it want it to be. So maybe someone felt they should leak it because it's not coming out. I really can't tell. But look, the bottom line is also at this time where we're really getting all worked up about classified documents, this whole Trump prosecution hinges on Trump not doing exactly the right storage thing with classified documents. This is like going in the opposite direction, but why doesn't Joe Biden abide by the will of the people, the vote to declassify these documents? We deserve to know. We ought to know. And so many people have raised, I think, very important, pointed questions about how. Remember the speculation just even like 6 months ago from Atlantic and New York Times, reading that study on genetic materials at the Wuhan wet market and saying, oh yeah, this really points to what was it, to the raccoon dog?
Raccoon dog.
Well, if the government has known for like a long time that those 3 scientists got sick and is just not giving that, no one would be speculating about raccoon dogs if they just like let people know that hey, we know these 3 scientists got sick.
And that's such an important point because some of the discourse around classification, and you've mentioned this point several times, I think, astutely, is that the classification system more often than not has been used to protect government leakers who give stories to mainstream news organizations, like perhaps raccoon dog story, at the same time that they use it to prosecute people who leak things that are in the public interest, like Julian Assange. And the fiction of there being an Espionage Act that is applied broadly, and that is actually well tailored to protecting the government interests, national security secrets, and the like, is really exploded when you look at the selective prosecution of people under that act. And I do think it's difficult to have this conversation now because it's undeniable that Donald Trump did violate the letter of the law, and also that he did more than what Pence and others have done insofar as when the National Records Archives politely asked for the documents back, he threw a fit and he did this shell game where he moved the boxes from bathroom to bathroom and all of this absurd stuff that we now know from the indictment. But it's also true that people who did lesser things, it's not equivalent, but people who did lesser things, the likes of which Biden and Pence and Hillary Clinton have done, have also been prosecuted and sent to jail, including Julian Assange, who did not steal the documents. He was a reporter that reported on the documents. So I think there is a broader conversation to have. I know it's difficult because there's this question of Trump and whether he should be accountable hanging in the balance, but there is a broader conversation to be had about whether or not by buying into this idea of the national interest and the necessity of having certain documents classified, we are enabling a kind of a series of political pogroms on people who very much do have what I would call the public interest at heart by letting us know about illegal drone programs and the like.
Well, we've got a clip of a Democratic congressman talking about the potential origin of COVID disclosures. Let's watch that.
It's hard to figure out exactly how a pandemic started, exactly where. This is true of Ebola, it's true of HIV. It's particularly hard when the people who are in charge of all of the science, all of the jurisdictions are not being forthcoming. And of course, the Chinese have not been open and transparent about exactly what happened inside their country.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true, but right now, the U.S. government is not being open and transparent. And I remember all this speculation. Well, we'll never know. We'll never know what really happened. Maybe we'll never know. Or maybe the U.S. government can do some pretty straightforward kind of intelligence gathering and find out that, oh, actually, it's pretty definitive that 3 people at this lab got sick with COVID, and that predates the wet market breakout anyway. And that's pretty definitive proof. And they might have known that for months. So we're all saying, I guess we'll never know when the U.S. government actually, again, maybe allegedly does know. And I don't understand the lack of curiosity that some people have about this. This is kind of a big, millions of people died because of this. if it is the case that there was not proper oversight in the funding of this research, that we weren't making sure proper protective policies were being followed. Again, it is not all the idea that this was like a racist anti-Chinese conspiracy is so preposterous, because the further we go down this line of inquiry, the more the U.S. government looks to be just as at fault. Yeah. And maybe that's the reason they're not interested in doing these disclosures, frankly.
Yeah, I also do think it has something to do with the scale, the enormity of what happened, and the lives lost, and the financial costs. It makes it so that whoever's responsible is basically judgment-proof. Nobody is ever going to be able to pay for the externalities that accrued as a consequence of either a zoonotic origin or lab leak theory. And so I think to some people it's like, well, if we find out who's responsible, if there's something you can do, it makes them feel sort of impotent and like there's not any point of looking. But the people who benefit from that worldview are those who should have to pay something. And have some kind of accountability. Right. And I think it does the whole world a disservice not to have real curiosity, as you put it, into what these origins really are.
Right. I mean, I watched the Chernobyl miniseries. The Soviets prosecuted the person overseeing the lab who was negligent. I mean, if the nuclear sub guy, accidentally presses it, this can't happen because, right, two people have to turn the key at once. But if they both accidentally turn the key at once and they nuked New Zealand and millions of people died, I would think, we wouldn't say, oops, too bad. We shouldn't. No one should be okay with that. Yeah. Anyway, we hope to learn more, hear more, and actually have the intelligence declassified soon. More Rising right after this.